Welcome back to another Python project. In today's video, we'll be making a simple guessing game where you have to try to guess a random number that the computer has picked. So let's go ahead and see how this is going to look. So I'm going to start by guessing a number. After I guess the number 2, it says guess higher, so I need to guess a higher number. Let's try 7. It's still higher than 7, so let's try 9. Okay, so 9 was the correct answer, and it told me I got it in 3 tries. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in and see how we can code this in Python. Okay, so to get started with this, since we're going to be using random numbers, let's go ahead and start by saying from random import randint. So this will allow us to pick a random number, a random integer, between a lower bound and an upper bound. Let's go ahead and store this in a variable called random. This is going to be equal to randint. My lower bound is going to be 1, and for now let's keep our upper bound at 10. So what it's going to do so far, the computer will pick a random number between 1 and 10, and that'll be stored in the variable called random. Next, I need to be able to get a number from the user. To do that, I'm going to say guess is equal to input, and then for the prompt, I'll say guess a number, just like that. And since we're going to be taking in integers in front of the input function here, I'm going to say int to convert whatever input they give us into an integer. Next, we need to compare our random number that the computer picks to the guess that the user will select. To do that, let's go ahead and start by saying if guess is less than random. So in this case, the guess the user gives is going to be less than the random number that the computer picks. So in that case, we need to tell the user to guess a higher number. So we're going to print guess higher. Okay, another case could be if the guess is greater than random. So if guess, and instead of a regular if, I'm going to do an else. So else if. So guess greater than random. So in this case, the guess the user gives is bigger than the random number. So if that happens, I need to tell the user to guess lower. Okay, the last case is if it is equal to random. So we'll say else. Then we're going to print you win. Okay, so the way our program is working right now, the computer will pick a random number between 1 and 10. We're also going to be getting input from the user. We're going to ask them to guess a number. And then we're going to check to see if the number is less than random, if it is greater than random, or if it's equal to random, which will be our else statement down here. Let's go ahead and run our program so far and see what we have. And we're just going to add one more thing before we actually test this. So after it picks the random number, we're going to print random so that we can see what number it picked, and that way it'll be easier to test. Alright, so now running the program. Okay, so it picked the number 10, so I can try picking something lower than 10, so maybe 5, and we should expect it to print out a message that says guess higher. Alright, and that's exactly what we get. So let's go back and run this a few more times. Okay, so now it picked the number 6, so let's guess a number bigger than 6 this time, so let's try 9. It should say guess lower. Alright, great, and one more time. Alright, the number 7, let's try picking the number 7, and it prints you win. Okay, so we need to add a few more things to this game. The first thing we're going to do is instead of having to rerun the program every time we want to make a guess, let's go ahead and put these statements right here inside of a while true loop. So I'm going to say while true, and then I need to indent these 3 lines of code. Whoops, not delete it. Alright, so just indent, not delete. I also need to put my guess statement inside of this loop, so I'm going to copy it and then put it inside the while true loop. So what it's going to do, it'll ask for a guess, it'll check to see if it falls into one of these three categories, and then it'll go back and take another guess. Let's go ahead and try this out now. Okay, so the number the computer picked was the number 8. So if I try picking the number 3, it asks me to guess higher. I can try the number 9, guess lower, and then once I finally pick 8, then it says you win. Okay, the next thing we'll add to this, so it says you win, but it's still asking for another guess. So let's make it whenever you get the number right, then it will break the code and end my program. So going back to the code, so that'll fall under this else statement here. So after it prints you win, let's go ahead and just write the word break to break out of the loop. So now if I go back and run the program, so number 2, if I guess the number 2, it prints you win and then ends my program. Alright, so let's go back and add a couple more features that makes the game a little bit more playable and customizable. So instead of having to put this number right here, let's go ahead and create another variable, and this will be, let's go max, not max, let's do biggest number, or biggest num, and we're going to put this right here, and this will be equal to whatever we choose. So let's say, let's do between 1 and 100 now. So this is not super useful at the moment, but later on when we're doing this, we can ask for the user to pick whatever they want the largest number to be, and then set it for my random number up here. For now though, we're just converting this part, the maximum for my randint statement, into a variable so that we can change it right over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our program. So now we've changed the program to pick a random number between 1 and our biggest number possible, which is 100. Okay, it picked the number 26, so that's bigger than what we've been seeing before. So let's go ahead and head back to the program. And the next thing we're going to add is a way to continue the game once you win. So we're going to go back to this else section down here, and we're going to remove the break. So you can keep this if you like, if you just want to have it guess one number and then have it be over. If you want to continue playing, then what we can do is have the computer pick a new random number, and we'll do that by saying random is equal to randint, just like we did before, between 1 and our biggest number. Okay, so now after you pick the right number, then it'll just select a new number and continue with the game. So let's go ahead and try this out now. So guess the number, so I'll guess the number 94. New number. Okay, so it asked me to pick a new number, so I've got the correct number. Now the computer has picked a different number. So if I guess the number 94 again, then it's not the correct number. So I'll have to guess lower. And let's not sit here, since there's 100 different numbers, it may take me a while. So let's go ahead and just head back to the code and see if we can add a few more things before we end with this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and let the users know what numbers to guess between. So right here, before the while true loop, let's go ahead and print a message that says guess the numbers between 1 and the biggest number. So we're going to say print guess a number between, let's do 1 and this is where the kind of the variable comes in handy, so I get to say biggest number like that. So it'll, before I get started, it'll say guess a number between 1 and the biggest number, and then in the future, if I change this number up here, I don't have to worry about changing it down below here. It'll automatically update it. So let's go ahead and run the program and try this out now. Okay, and it says guess a number between 1 and 100. If I go back to the program and change this to the number 50 and run my program again, so now it says guess a number between 1 and 50. Okay, and from this point on, we'll just be adding some extra features to make it a little bit more playable. So let's go ahead and head back to the code. And right here, we're going to add another conditional statement. So we're going to say if our guess is less than or equal to our random number, then we'll do these checks right here. and then we'll say down here else. So this will mean if it's bigger than the random number that's possible. So in this case, if they pick a number like 52, then we'll print out a message that says, just a reminder that says pick numbers between 1 and 50, so that they don't keep guessing numbers that are too big. Alright, and we'll say, let's go ahead and just say guess numbers less than, and then biggest number. Like that. Okay, let's go ahead and back and run our program. So guess a number between 1 and 50 if I try to guess 55. Then it says guess numbers less than 50 if I try it again with 70. Guess numbers less than 50. So it's just a reminder for the users to guess numbers that are possible. Okay, so I think the next thing we're going to do is add a counting feature to this game, so that whenever you guess the correct answer, it'll display how many tries it took you. Let's go ahead and head back to our code and see how we can do this. So the first thing we're going to do is make a counter variable. So we're just going to say counter is equal to 1. The next thing we're going to do is any place where we guess a incorrect answer, we're going to increase the counter by 1. So one place that is an incorrect guess would be in this statement right here. So right under here, we're going to say counter plus equals 1. This will add 1 to the counter variable. The other spot where we have an incorrect guess is right below it. So we'll say down here, counter plus equal 1. And then right here, once we actually get it right, we'll go ahead and print out how many tries it took. So we'll say print. Oops, so let's not make a new line. Let's just add it to the line up here. So it says you win, and then we'll add you guessed it in, comma, we'll do counter, and then tries. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it out now. So we added a counter variable, and then wherever we have a wrong guess, we're going to add 1 to the counter. Whenever we get it right, then we'll display how many attempts it took based on what number is stored in the counter variable. Alright, let's go ahead and run the program. Okay, guess a number between 1 and 50. The correct answer is 28. So let's go ahead and guess a few numbers before we guess it correctly. So we'll guess 39. And that is a problem. So let's go ahead and go back and see what's wrong now. So it's telling me to guess a number less than 50, even though my guess is less than 50. Okay, and the mistake I made, so it's not if guess is less than or equal to random. It should be guess is less than or equal to biggest number. Alright, let's go back and test this now. Alright, let's go ahead and test that feature again. So let me guess a number like 27. Alright, good. So it's working now. Let's guess a number greater than 50. Guess numbers less than 50. Okay, so a small mistake, but it's working now. So what I'm checking for this time is whenever I guess the correct answer, which would be 25, it should display the number 3. Okay, so it says you guessed it in 2 tries. And the reason for that, and we can fix this in the code in just a second. So it took this one and this one as attempts, but it didn't count this one as an attempt. So that can be something that you can either add into the program where it counts that as an attempt, or you can just leave it alone. If you do want to take this as an attempt, then what we have to do is head back to the code. And the other spot where it could be an incorrect guess would be down here. So what we'll say down here is counter plus equals 1. So this will be totally up to you. So if you want to count attempts that are bigger than the greatest number, so bigger than whatever you choose here, then you can include this right here. If you don't want to count those guesses, then you can just take this line out. Okay, let's go ahead and test our code for the final time. Okay, so guess a number between 1 and 50. Let's try bigger than 50, so 80. We'll try 45. 12, and then finally we'll guess 49. So this time it should count this guess as well, so I should have 1, 2, 3. Oops, I miscounted. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do have the 4 guesses. So it says you win, you guessed it in 4 guesses, or 4 tries. and then it asked me for a new number because it picked a new one. So if I try to guess 49 again, then it has picked a new number. Okay, so that's going to be the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one.